This is Jean Marie Ward for Buzzy Magazine. With me today is best-selling author R.A. Salvatore, who is here at DragonCon as the guest of honor. You have a really interesting approach to writing for the gaming industry. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, to me, as the technology improves, so do the tools to tell a story improve. And I think that's the critical part. And I don't think this is anything unique to me. I mean, if you talk to any video game company, they're all trying to get to the point where the character actions have a bigger impact on the world around them. And technology is making that possible. I mean, if you go back to the early days of MMOs, you were doing dial-up. And so it was enough just to get people to stay in a persistent world, let alone change it. But you see games like Guild Wars that just came out that have events going on that are cooperative, but what you do makes a difference in that region at that time with that event. And to me, the way I approach it is that the most important character when you read a book is the character in the book. You're living vicariously through the character. You have no control over what this character will do. You're on the edge of your seat when this character is in danger because you're living through the character. In a video game, your character is the one that matters. And so it's what I want players in video games that I have anything to do with to be able to do. My goal is always for them to write their own book as they go through the game. Their own story, the life story of their character that has an impact that can be heroic or villainous maybe on the world.
How did you get started writing?
When I was very young, I used to read all the time. I had to deal with my mom. As long as I got straight A's, she'd let me bag school and stay home and read my Peanuts comic books. I have this great collection of first edition Charlie Brown books, and I used to read, and I used to write Snoopy books and dinosaur books, and I used to write all the time. I'm talking like kindergarten, first, second grade. I loved it. And then school pretty much beat the reading out of me and the writing out of me. They took it from being something that was like letting my imagination soar to being a chore, with red marks all over the paper and books to read that were totally irrelevant to anything in my life or anything I wanted to do or accomplish or learn about. And I remember, 8th grade, I would get books like Ethan Frome and Silas Marner. And, you might argue with me now that those are good books, but they weren't good books to an 8th grade boy that really didn't care about them. And so by the time I got out of high school, I actually started college as a math computer science major. I only wrote when I had to and only read when I had to get the grades. And then my freshman year of college, for Christmas, 1977, my sister Susan gave me a copy of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And I was mad because I wanted money. My car was breaking down. I needed money. And so I just tossed them aside and didn't think anything of them. A couple of months later, New England got hit with what's called the Blizzard of '78. And it shut everything down for a week. You couldn't go on the roads. I was trapped. I was 19 years old, trapped in my mom's house and wasn't really enjoying myself. But then I found out I wasn't trapped because I went to Middle-earth with a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. And it brought everything back to me. It brought me back to being that kid reading the Peanuts books. And all of a sudden that love of adventure was rekindled because of that book. And I kept thinking, why didn't someone give me this book to read when I was in the 8th grade? Why did they give me Silas Marner? Give me this book. And so I changed my major to communications media, and all of my electives became literature courses. And my love of reading rekindled, and a year later I was reading Chaucer in Middle English and reading Shakespeare and Joyce and all the classics and just loving reading again. But I always had a soft spot for fantasy because of Tolkien. And by the time I graduated from college, I was out of books to read. There weren't that many fantasy books out there. There's Brooks and Tolkien and Donaldson and McCaffrey, but there just weren't as many. They couldn't keep up with me. And so I had nothing to read. I wrote my own. And that's how I started writing.
How did you get published? Was Drizzt your character, or did someone else come up with him?
Yeah, no, it was, I had sent the book I had written in 1982-83 to a company called TSR. They do the Dungeons & Dragons game. I sent it to all the publishers, and that was one of them. And they couldn't publish that book, but asked me to audition for The Forgotten Realms. And yes, Drizzt was my character, and Ten Towns was everything in my books I created, but I created it within their shared world of The Forgotten Realms.
Well, Drizzt has quite a following. In fact, when I was in the art room yesterday, a young man found out I was going to interview you and said, "Oh God, ask him what's happening to Drizzt, because I got to know he killed off everybody."
Yeah, it's a tough time for Drizzt. Obviously, I'm not going to answer that because there are more books coming out. The next book comes out in March. It's called The Last Threshold, and there'll be another book in August. And read on, and you'll see what happens to Drizzt. Authors aren't going to tell you what's going to happen next. What's the point of reading the books then?
That's true. But they want to know. There's
Yes,
more Drizzt
I
books.
want them to want to know.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's called job security.
Absolutely. Are the Forgotten Realms books next up on your list to be finished, or do you have something else in the hopper?
The book for March is done. I'm working on the book that will be coming out next August, and then after that probably another Forgotten Realms book. Yeah, I've thrown myself into the realms pretty fully for the next couple of years at least.
Great. I know your fans will be happy to hear that. One thing before we go, could you share with our audience your proudest moment as a writer?
Well, that would be back in 1983, and I don't know if pride is the right word, but it was the most amazing moment as a writer, I think, was when I actually finished my first book. I wrote it longhand in a spiral notebook by candlelight to Fleetwood Mac's Tusk album. I was working in a plastics factory and as a bouncer, and I'd come home from my work in the nightclubs 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'd sit down with a pen and a notebook and I'd start writing. And I remember the day I got it done. It was almost an homage to James Joyce's The Dead, and I finished the book with a snowstorm across the world I had created. And on that day, it was a March day, and I looked outside and it was snowing in New England, and those big puffy flakes that you get in the spring storms were drifting down in front of the light pole across the street from my house. And I went downstairs and I was just dumbstruck that I had done something like that, because to me it wasn't about getting published. I had no intention of even trying to get published at that time. I just wanted to do something that my kids could give to my grandkids someday, if I ever had kids and grandkids, which would, they could show them this work that I had done, and I wouldn't be just a number to them or just a name from the past, and they would get to know who their grandfather or great-grandfather was down the line. And I went downstairs, and my girlfriend, now my wife, was down there with my dad, and my mom, and they had a bottle of champagne that said, "It's a book." And I remember that day vividly.
And you're still married?
Still married, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much. And thank you from Buzzy Magazine.